Welcome to part 4 of the OpenRoads show. In this episode, I will discuss creating corridors, template library, and also parametric constraints and point controls. So here we are in our workspace and our work set. I'm going to create a new 2D file in our roadway folder, and I'm going to name it S228. But I'm going to give it the name corridor. And this is where our 3D model, we're going to start to see our 3D model being created in this file. I'll just pause the video real quick to save y'all some time. Alright, once the file opens up, we want to go ahead and attach our survey. There's our terrain. I went into that file and turned off the levels that I didn't want right now. We can go turn them on later once we start modeling the existing road. I'm going to grab that terrain and I'm going to set it active. There it created a 3D model for us in our DGN file. The next reference, I want to attach the alignments. There's our horizontal alignment right there. So first let's go over the template library. In the OpenRoads modeling workflow, under corridors, we can see this whole section right here under create. If I hit this drop down under the template tool, we want to go to create template, just to show you what we're going to work with these corridors. It'll default to our workspace template library, and here we have all the little pieces that create a typical section. I'm just going to open up one for an example. As you can see, we have a lot to choose from. So there we go. Let's turn off these names up here in this checkbox so we can see it. Looks familiar, doesn't it? All these different green lines are the different possibilities. They have priorities on them, like a short 4:1 fill slope. Sorry, wrong. I should have clicked on the point. So we have a 2:1 slope that has a higher priority than the other ones. See, it's set to 50. So that way it'll come in here and solve, let's say, a ditch first. See, yep, it's lower. Lower the earlier it'll solve it. And we'll get into that more later, but just a quick to show you, we can see our pavement structure. And these green things are called end conditions. Alright, so we'll close that and let's go create our corridor. So in the create section, we'll hit new corridor, and we can just follow our prompts. It says corridor baseline. I'm just going to select our horizontal alignment, and then we want to reset to choose that active profile that we created in the last video, and we can see there it brings in the name. I'm just going to data click to accept that, and we can see that yellow box gets created. Okay, that's just kind of an outline that'll go away here in a second. So now we are prompted to create what's called a template drop, and that's where we'll go in and we'll choose one of those typical sections, and we can set different parameters like start, stop, and also how frequently it drops. To start with, I usually go with 12.5 feet. We can change this dynamically as we work with the template, so don't stress too much over that. For now, let's go. We can click that little 3-dot icon to browse, and let's see which template we used. This one last time. Okay, we'll just go with this one for now. This is just a very generic template, nothing fancy. And I'll select OK, and then I'll data click to accept that. And we can see now I can click on a start and stop if we had other templates or features we wanted to. For now, I'm just going to select Alt, or I'm going to click Alt, and that's going to lock it to the start. We can see there our cursor menu has that grayed out, and there's also a little lock symbol there. And then we can do our end. I'm going to press Alt again and lock it to the end, and then I'll left click to accept that. And I'll just click through the prompts again with the intervals. We can see it process there real quick. And there we go. The grid lines, each one of these perpendicular lines to the alignment, that's where it's solving, dropping that template. And we can see our different linear features like the edge of pavement, and then even the things underneath. This is actually was created in our 3D model, and it's just being referenced in. For instance, if I go to my references and I turn off this 3D model right here, that's the other model in the DGN. If I turn that off, we don't see those perpendicular lines. So all we see are our linear features that are on top. Real quick, so I'm going to hold down the right mouse button and bring up my quick menu, and under View Controls I'm going to do Plan in 3D, just so we can see that 3D model. There it is. And let's make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to rotate that so y'all can see it. Here we go. So remember those priorities, it's solving a ditch right here. We may not want it right there. We'll have to go back and tidy it up, but this is just the first iteration right now with the typical template. We can see it looks very nice, looks much like a road would look. And we can see our survey features there because they have elevations on them. Alright, let's go to our PowerPoint. So we went over the template library, created a corridor. Let's do a parametric constraint now. So a parametric constraint is a variable that's located within that template library. And I can open that up real quick. Let's go to our template that we just dropped so we can see it. Alright, we'll turn off these names. So let's say, for instance, a parametric constraint would be this ditch depth right here. If I go to Active Templates, we can see all the different options we have. I'm going to open this parametric constraint option. And here's all the different variables we have to control our template numerically. So let's go to ditch depth left, because I just know where that is. See, when I select it, we can see that blue box surrounds our point that it's going to control. If I open that, we can see that it's tied to that end condition. Okay. So I'm going to double click on that ditch depth, and we can see it's set to 3. Now, I can go in and change this here, or I can go into my file and change it there. I'm just showing y'all what that is showing right there. So I'm going to cancel that. Let's look at another one real quick. Let's look at our shoulder slope left. So that's going to control how that point is going to swing from that edge of the pavement right there. If I double click on it, we've got an 8% because it's going up. It's going left to right at 8%. Alright, so let's go apply one of these. Remember that yellow box that was the corridor? Well, now it's replaced. The line is actually following the outermost piece of the template or corridor, and then we have these handles right here that we can click on to select that corridor. So I'll just hover over it to bring up my context menu, and this hammer lets us go to our corridor objects. We have all the different options to choose from. A parametric constraint has this question mark and the 2 lines. So I'm going to left click to accept that. And here we can see our toolbox. We have start, stop, and we have some other options like values and the actual constraint we want to do. So before I enter anything, let's choose something. I want this ditch depth on this right side to run more shallow than 3 feet. We don't want to cut over into there right away too much. So So instead of, so let's see what it is right now. We'll go to the drop down and go to ditch depth right. So it's set to -3. I'm going to uncheck the lock to end because I might go down to 3 feet later. So I can just follow my cursor prompts to click to the start. And then for the end, let's just run that 250 feet just for a visual. We can go back and change this later. This is not permanent. I'll left click to accept that. I'll left click to accept the parametric constraint we chose. And now we can do values. So instead of -3, let's just do -1. And I'll left click to accept. And we want to transition. We'll stay at -3. And then it processed it. So let's look at our model. We can see here that ditch depth is a lot less than it was. See, we can all see it get deeper as it gets further and further away from the road. All right, maybe we're tying to the crest of a hill up there. Excuse me. All right, so that's a parametric constraint. There's lots of them. Let's throw one out here. Let's widen that shoulder. We can go on the left side. So again, I'm going to grab my corridor. I'm going to go to my corridor objects and select parametric constraint. And I'm going to choose shoulder width on the left. So I'll lock to start. I'll keep it at 250. Accept that constraint, and then we'll go from instead of -6, we'll do -2 to -6. Or we could keep it at -2. I'm just going to do -6 to show a taper. And there we can see that shoulder adjust very quickly. I mean, we keep track of these. If you want to see a list of them, one of the cool tools is the corridor objects tool. Again, we can get that through the context menu. This bucket right here, it's going to contain all these different controls that we have on our corridor. Or if we wanted to go to the ribbon under this edit section, we can get to it that way. And then we're prompted to locate the corridor, and it'll bring up a big table of menus. We got different options. So if we could go to parametric constraints, we can see here that it shows both those, and we can go back and change them later if we need to. I think, and then next we have a point control. So in order to do a point control, we might want to draw a linear feature first. So let's turn on our survey, some of that data. Let's do we can see them over here in our 3D model. We can just leave them there. I'm going to pause the video real quick while I brainstorm. Alright, so we're back. The point control I'm going to do is going to be for an edge of pavement. So up here in geometry, I'm going to grab my lines tool, and for my feature definition I'm just going to set it to sketch level. And all we're going to do, we're just going to create a 2D line to make this easier. So I'm going to left click here and just end it over here to kind of show I want that ditch to follow that. Maybe we're tying into this channel. And then I'm just going to move that starting point close. I'm not going to click on that line. We don't want to connect that to the corridor because that's going to recalculate as we get to this. Alright, so we have a 2D line with no profile. We're not going to worry about that right now.
Hello, this is Alexander Williams.
Alright, so now that we have our line drawn in there, let's go and create a point control. I'm going to select my corridor, go to corridor creation tools, and down here, this is the icon. We want to use create point control. And we can start and stop it. I'm just going to snap it to the end of our line here. And you'll see why here in a second. I'm going to just name it, keep that name, ditch left taper. And then we want to choose our point in our template. I kept turning these off. So you want to know the template pretty good. I'm going to do ditch in left. And then we have different modes. You can control it horizontally and vertically. Right now I just have a 2D line, so I'm going to keep it on horizontal. And we can control different options. Here, I'm just going to keep it on linear geometry. And then I'm going to select this element. And then I'm going to choose no for the secondary alignment. What that would do is instead of the template solving perpendicular to the center line, it would then turn perpendicular to this our 2D line, our linear element that we're using. And I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep it going perpendicular to the center line. There are some situations where you might want to use it as a secondary alignment, and especially if you had guardrail slopes or something. I'm going to choose no, and then we can set priorities if we have multiples. And again, we can go back and change these later in the corridor objects dialog. And then we can also again do tapers. I'm just going to do 0 and 0 to keep it simple. And then it grabbed it. There we can see it solving that a little bit. One of the reasons I snapped to that line is we can come here and we can move that further down and it'll solve that ditch dynamically. So we can come in here. If we don't want that ditch to taper out in that direction, we can come grab our line, move it in. There we go. Looks like we're going to end up needing guardrail down here anyways, so this is just an example to show you what this software can do. If we kick this line out here, I'll show you something. We can see it even juts out. It keeps that same shoulder slope and just sends it on out. It makes this a nice transition in there for us. But that is a point control that you could do. It'll come in handy. Alright, and that's all we're going to cover in this episode. Stay tuned. Alright, thanks.